Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this North Bay Electric Auto Association meeting.
This meeting is recorded.
My name is Cecilia Sullivan. I'm president of the NBEAA. And great, let's get started. Do we have an introduction from Some Clean Power?
No, we don't have it. There was actually a presentation sitting up one slide before, but it's not part of our slide set. So no presentation. Sean's not here today.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so check last night. The community level in Sonoma County is still low, and we're still meeting in public in person. Okay, on the agenda today, we have introductions. We'll be going through some chapter business. We'll discuss AV events and other things. Then we'll discuss news, and if we have time, we'll have a little open discussion followed by a presentation.
And the presentation, we're going to be talking about what do you need to look for when you're buying an electric car. So it'll be a very fast presentation. I'll give it, and then we'll have a discussion and start recording what people's ideas are. You asked me today to run. Is that correct?
Yes, Jerry, would you like to take over?
Oh, before you do this, is Woody on the agenda. Cecilia, are we going to be able to squeeze in the issue around endorsing or signing on to the SB 233 letter?
That is included in the chapter business.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and in fact, one of the problems I have here, Cecilia, you might be able to do it better than I can there. I can see most of the people in the room and most there, but it says there's more further out in the world, and I can't see them while I have the presentation up.
Yes,
so.
yes, can you take the presentation down while we do the introductions? That way.
Okay, that's good.
That's been a request for a while. So
here we go. All right, let's do intros. Jack, you're sitting next to me. Why don't you say who you are and how do you get around or whatever? But make it brief, because otherwise we use the entire meeting.
Oh, my last name is Christensen, so that's what they'll call it. I'm Jack Christensen, and I have a 2011 Nissan Leaf along with bike that mine has. I get about, I don't know, maybe 30 miles. I can drive from Sebastopol to Santa Rosa and back, and that's 90% of my driving. I'm downtown Sebastopol, so.
And we're going to go around this way, and then we'll pick you guys up on the video. I'm Jerry Glazer. I'm driving a 2018 Leaf. I'm still looking for another EV. And I used to drive it in 2011 until I got down to about 50 miles on mine. And my scooter used to do about the mileage that your car is doing.
Hi, so I'm Brad. I live in Santa Rosa, drive a 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid, about 185,000 miles on it. So I'm interested in the topic today as far as what to look for in getting an EV, whether it's a new or used.
Right, everybody, I'm Mike Poole. My car turned 12 years old just last week, so but it's on its last leg, so I am shopping. If we have two EVs, that's our original one.
I'm John Mullimard. I got here today on my e-bike, 35 minutes from Sebastopol by the swap meet, and I would have gone faster if Joe Rodota was open.
Oh, it's closed?
Joe Rodota's closed from Bright all the way through downtown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so took the surface streets and I made it. So hope I can make it back, but I'm going to go Prince on the way back.
You can go up the Santa Rosa Creek.
Santa Rosa Creek is a beautiful drive, so I'm hoping to go there. And then what month are we in? Last month we bought an EV6, and I'll be doing a review on the EV6 next month. I think that was the plan. pull my trailers with my, my Denali. It's diesel, so that's an incredible vehicle. 27 miles per gallon on a diesel, which I still just am staggered by, so. Anyway, over to you.
Can I just jump in? Ask for those at the Energy Center if you could speak up loudly and clearly, and for others in the room, if you could minimize noise, that will help improve the ability for others online to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I was about to ask you how the sound was.
Yeah, Zainer Scheiding, Sabbatical. I have a hybrid on the inside.
Steve Pierce from Sebastopol, and we have a 2015 Nissan Leaf and looking to upgrade that to maybe a Bolt, maybe an Equinox, we'll see. I'm going to give a shameless plug for the Sebastopol Electrification Survey. I know there are a lot of Sebastopol people in the room, but you don't need to be a Sebastopol person. And we're trying to find out what awareness there is of the efficient equipment, awareness of the incentives, barriers that people have, and what kind of assistance and interest they have in the topic. So thanks.
Brent Arthur, Santa Rosa. I work here at Sonoma Clean Power on the programs team, focusing on transportation electrification. And as a heads up, I know there looked like there were 2 cars that were parked up in the parking lot. So I plugged you in, but we're still playing around with your system. And our kind of goal is to have it only charge between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. to kind of like match solar production. So we just turn that back on. So they will start charging at 11. And it's a pain to override it. So please forgive me. Yeah, and I drive a 2016 Leaf. And then, yeah, 2021, we got an ID4, which is plugged in up at the lot right now.
Okay, we're going to go across the screen at this point. David, you're at the top of our screen.
Hi, I'm Dave Eacock. I live in Fairfield, and lately I've been driving our 2007 Saturn Vue hybrid.
Bruce, you're there next.
Yeah, Bruce Neiden. I'm up here in Friday Harbor, Washington. I've reduced my personal inventory to 5 vehicles, but I have some new interesting stories. I picked up a 2022 Ford Lariat EV pickup truck in Oregon. It was a demo, and I drove it up on the Electrify America CCS network, which was very impressive. I had no idea it was rolling out that fast. And I got a new little gizmo. Maybe some of you have tried out the RFID jewelry that works for Tesla Model 3s and let's see, the last 2 cars they put out, the Model Y. So I don't need to worry about my key card or my key fob because it's on my finger, which is great for me. But anyway, I have some stories to share. I have also have Alan Soule's Tesla Roadster 101, which just arrived earlier this week in Phoenix, Arizona, at a shop called Gruber Motors. If you've Googled them, they have kind of an interesting history. They've had 2 factory fires that have destroyed a bunch of Roadsters in the past, but they have a very deluxe factory now. They've worked out a lot of the kinks, and they're working on trying to resuscitate the Roadsters that are remaining, and they've kind of narrowed in on a recent sort of discovery in the enhanced battery pack, the R80 battery pack, which Allen's has, and it's apparently got some cells that were manufactured that are contributing to a problem. So they're an interesting group. They've got 3 or 4 hour-long videos posted, and
Stop you. I'm going to stop you. We're doing intros, and we've got the peanut gallery time.
Okay.
Jump in the peanut gallery.
Okay, I'm done.
You get 35 seconds. That's the limit, and after that, the buzzer goes off.
I didn't hear the buzzer.
We hear it.
Cecilia, you're on the screen next.
Hi, Cecilia Sullivan. I drive a 2018 Model 3, and I'm located up in Mendocino County.
Ellen.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellen. I live in Santa Rosa, and I drive a 2017 Bolt that I bought used in 2019, and I love it.
All right. Russ,
Hi, I'm Russ Wigglesworth. I'm in Petaluma. I drive a 2015 Kia Soul EV, and I'm waiting for my Aptera.
okay, Woody,
Hi all, Woody Hastings, Sebastopol, still chugging along with a 2013 Chevy Volt with the V as in Victor.
Caleb,
Caleb Lander. I live in Aliso Viejo down in Southern California. I drive a 2023 Volkswagen ID4.
I want to talk to you more about it later on. Bonnie,
Yeah, I live in Petaluma and I have a 2018 Nissan Leaf and charging station, both of which were financed by Sonoma Clean Power in part. So thank you.
okay, Gary,
Hi, I'm Gary. I'm in Thousand Oaks in Southern California, and I drive a 2018 Model 3. And I don't do much driving during the week, but every month or month and a half, I make a trip to and from the Bay Area, and I love it for that.
Marilyn.
Yes, good morning. I'm in Sebastopol and I drive a truck that's almost as old as I am. 1985 Toyota. It gets 14 miles to the gallon at best. And I've been running it into the ground and I'm not going to drive it past May. I'm looking at a nifty 2015 Leaf right now. A Leaf would get me to the ocean or to Santa Rosa. The range would be perfect. I'm ready to give up my old truck and I'd like some help in how to do that. Maybe rebate, maybe not. Thank you. And I wish that you would keep informing the public like you're doing to me. Thank you so much.
By the way, Marilyn, the county actually has a service, a hotline you can call and they'll set up an appointment with you. And if you're trying to find rebates and whatever else, assist with that. And they keep track of everybody. I actually got the point to them by coming here. They handed me the county's card and they were very well informed.
And who's this talking?
This is Jerry.
Oh, hi, Jerry. Hello. Thank you, County. I'll talk to you.
Okay. Okay, let me go back and bring the presentation back up again. Chapter business. And Cecilia, you're in charge of that.
All right. Okay, so the NBEAA is a chapter of the Electric Vehicle Association. And Electric Vehicle Association is responsible for educating, advocating for the rapid adoption of electric vehicles. You can find us on our website at nbeaa.org. We also have a forum for email notifications for meetings and recaps, and you can find that on the website. And we also have a Facebook group, which you can also find via the website. And we have a YouTube channel. You can find recordings of the meetings at youtube.com/@NBEAA. It's also available as a link from our website. And PDFs from our meetings are also available on the website.
And because of Cecilia, we have 2 years worth of meetings. So if you ever missed one, you can see it.
And we have a number of other ways that we can communicate depending on how you want to be involved in the club. For those involved in curating the news for the meeting and presentations, we have NBEA-team, and we'll talk a little more about that. NBEA-discuss, if you want to have a more active discussion, those will be emails that you can get as they come in. We have our web group, NBEA-web, and this is for those who work on the website. NBEA-officers is used for the officers of the club as a contact for any kind of official communications that need to happen. and NBEAA-Press, which is used for handling interactions with the press or media. Okay. So if you'd like to submit news or any interesting events that are coming up, you can just go ahead and send those to NBEAA-team. Please provide details about why you think something is interesting and a link. All right. So as far as this is we had a request to join the coalition to support SB 252, which is to have two of the largest pensions in the state of California to divest from fossil fuels. This bill would, of course, require that. Before we sign on, we require a club vote. And you can find more. Was that?
And we can do that vote today, is that correct?
We could. I think that we may have discussed possibly wanting to have enough notice ahead of time. But us other officers, if they think that we can just go ahead and vote today, that makes sense.
Is there someone here that can speak to the?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask the same question. Yeah.
I don't know who submitted this.
Yeah, this was Sonia.
Sonia.
Oh.
And we might have to wait for Sonia so we may put her on the hook to give a pitch for it. I sent her some questions.
The deadline is Tuesday next week. So
Tuesday next week.
Yeah, these are a little pressing. So if we could.
What do you want to talk to?
Yeah, I could speak to this one. Let me just pull it up. Hold on just a second. It's this is a redo of an attempt that has happened many times in the California legislature, and so trying to get the largest pension fund, billions and billions of dollars in investment, to divest from fossil fuels. It's a pretty straightforward. It's not a really sort of in concept. It's not a complicated thing at all. So no deep convoluted, arcane policy to talk about. The difficulty is for CalPERS, the public employee retirement system, CalPERS and CalSTRS, state teachers retirement system, for them to extricate themselves, their investments, because they got billions of dollars invested. This is a Lena Gonzalez bill. Lena Gonzalez is sort of a champion of well-known champion, member of the legislature of oil and gas related legislation. So a very trusted member of the legislature who's put out a bunch of really good bills over time. I'll drop the Climate Center's entry in the bill tracker into the chat so people can take a look at that. I try to use sort of make those a little bit more easy to understand and to navigate than what you find at the state's official page. So it's a good bill. The Climate Center is supporting it. A whole bunch of other environmental groups, clean energy, climate related groups are supporting it. So it's really one of these, for the folks that work in state, or at least the sort of environmental advocacy groups that work in state policy, this is one of the ones we'd call a no-brainer. So I think the club would be in good company to sign on. I think that you really wouldn't have there's not much of a downside. I'll just say that. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
I'll also add that as if we were to join the coalition, we have an opportunity to join at various different levels of participation. I think for our club, it would make sense if for receiving new communications and pushing it out to our members would be like the level of commitment that we could probably make with agreeing to join this.
This is Dom.
Say
I
one
guess,
more thing. I didn't mention it's sponsored by Fossil Free California, obviously. Fossil Free California, if you're not familiar with them, really good group. I've worked with them for years on a bunch of different things. And so if you're not, familiar with them, yeah, I would just, they've got my stamp of approval, if that's helpful.
this is Dom. I guess I'd offer certainly on its merits, the bill makes a ton of sense. The only thing is that when you've got $9 billion invested, it gives you a lot of power within the fossil fuel companies to affect change. For example, we were able to get 3 board members onto ExxonMobil. We have board members in Shell, and we've had other voting blocks where we have gained power and causing companies to change their future investment streams. If we decide to put ourselves divest or put ourselves in line with this, well, I'm not sure, honestly, it would really matter per se, but you lose the ability to influence change from the inside with money. And $9 billion is a lot of money between the two retirement funds. And it's just there's always this, do you yell from the outside or yell from the inside? And where's the best place to affect change for the future?
And the one question which I sent to Sonia, which I really don't know, this is just in ignorance question, is what's the net effect when you divest? Does it impact the company at all? So, Woody, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks. Yeah, I do have my hand up. I can respond to both of those. On the first one, I don't know if it's in the FAQs or fact sheet somewhere. It's definitely been discussed, that question. It's a good question that was just posed about, working from the inside. That has been underway for years and it's produced very little results. That's one of the reasons why the efforts to now just say flat out divest is happening, because the efforts to work from the inside and get institutional change has not been fruitful. So that's the general response on that point. In terms of, what kind of impact does it have? I'll just say this: there is vociferous opposition. If it, you know that you're on the right track if you start to raise opposition to what you're trying to do. So I'll just point to that there's WISPA and all kinds of sort of organized opposition. Because it definitely has material impact. And one of their first talking points is, oh, don't bother with this silly divestment. That doesn't have any impact on the industry. It's not going to help on the climate. It absolutely will. And the indicator of that is the degree to which they're fighting it.
So Woody, and actually Dom, I believe that you said there was $9 billion.
You gotta speak up, they don't hear you.
Okay. I believe that you said there was $9 billion between CalSTRS and CalPERS that were currently invested in the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah.
Woody or anyone, do you guys know what the qualifications or requirements are for companies that would be divested from? Is it just the extraction industry, meaning the oil drillers, I guess, or maybe the refiners, or would it be, companies further down the road, maybe like PG&E?
I thought it was as many as 200 companies that are involved.
Okay, so there's been a list identified.
Yeah, there's been a list identified,
Yeah, that's a drill down. That's a good question. And it's kind of drilled down. And my understanding, and I haven't looked at it in a while, it does define it, and it specifies sort of what they mean by oil interests. And so certainly it's extraction. It's the majors, the major oil companies, investments in Shell or Chevron or Royal Dutch Shell, that kind of thing. But yeah, you'd need to get that. That's one of those details that is in there somewhere.
It's knowable.
All right.
So where would you like to go with this, President?
All right. So I move that we take a vote on this for those who are current paid EVA members. And Gerald asked if you could count hands there. So let's start with those who are in favor of joining this coalition, raise your hand. And if you're on or virtual, you can raise your hand using the reaction.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 for.
Okay. All right. Nine in person.
No, 9 total, including the ones that you saw raised.
Okay, including the virtuals.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Now you have to ask about opposed and you have to ask for abstentions, which most of the meetings I go to, they forget to do.
Okay, all those opposed?
1. Oh, 2. 2. 2 opposed.
Okay, and who's abstaining?
I'm abstaining. 1.
Do we abstain if we're not eligible to vote?
We don't even care what you have to say.
Just paid EVA members who are present.
Okay, so I think we're past, right?
Yep. All right, so we'll move forward with that. So I think we skipped one.
Oh, we skipped the slide?
Yes.
Hang on a second.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
We were asked to join the Climate Center in supporting SB 233. Would you like to speak to this, Woody?
I presume, yeah, sure. Thanks. And yeah, when I gave the presentation last month, I did mention SB 233. And so this is the bill that will, actually at this point, it's a bill that will direct the California Energy Commission to set a target. We're going to work strongly with them to make it 2027. To require most EVs, the ones where it makes sense to do so, and most EV SE electric vehicle charging equipment to have bi-directional capability for the purposes of grid reliability, resilience, and this is a Nancy Skinner bill. The Climate Center is actually the sponsor of the bill. I can drop the recording in progress. I can drop our link to the actual entry in our bill tracker for this one that has some information. Yeah, you know, again, for a group like this, I think it's fairly easy to understand that I think the topic of the conversation today around what do you want in an EV is sort of apropos, which is that, you know, bidirectionality is a good feature to have in an EV. You know, the Ford F-150 made a big splash when it came out. You know, you get that lifeboat capability with grid disruptions and whatnot. Yeah, I'll just say that the expectation is that there's going to be somewhere around 7 million some odd EVs in California by 2030, and so that would represent, just rounding things around, you know, you've got something on the order of 60 to 80 gigawatts of capacity rolling around on the roads. And so, you know, especially for certain duty cycle vehicles, fleet vehicles, there's a really, really compelling case to have that capacity available to the grid, to communities at, you know, sort of critical facilities, perhaps, or other sort of emergency centers and whatnot for communities. So there is a letter. I did forward that email. I think Cecilia forwarded it, that has the link to the endorsement letter. So typically what we do for the Sacramento stuff is we have these coalition letters. The NBEAA logo would be one of many logos on this letter to the committees that it's going to the Senate Energy Committee and the Senate Transportation Committee on April 18th and 25th respectively. And so, yeah, we invite your sign on, we invite your endorsement. I'll stop there and just respond to questions.
Woody, I love that you're pushing this because I do agree that there's huge potential here. One of the concerns that I have is just the affordability of charging. So I know that F-150 is like an early case, but you know, from what I've heard, like the all-in cost to install I forget the name that Ford calls it, but like it's the home resilience charging system.
NBEAA?
$2,500.
Yeah,
So all install, I've heard it's $15,000 to $20,000.
no, there's units for sale. Well, the unit itself,
The unit itself is like 5,000.
5,000 for the installation. I've been exploring this as well with Synergy.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out, because you need a transfer switch.
Yeah.
And it depends on where the car is versus where the panel is and all of that. So,
I've been talking to people who work in this field and people who have installed it. The first person said 15,000. The second person said actually it's closer to. Anyway, this is early. It's like a ton of different boxes. Hopefully they get condensed down. This is like DC bidirectional. My hope is that at some point we get to AC bidirectional.
You won't.
Well, but anyway,
I don't think.
For standards reasons, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyway, my just concern is like if we're going to install these chargers, is it better to just focus on the opportunities like buses, things like that, to make those bidirectional? And are we going to really increase the cost to electrify our transportation system if all the chargers need to be bidirectional?
And it says all.
So let me speak to that because it's not all. I did qualify that. It's important to qualify that for the reasons you're pointing to. There are cycles that make far more sense than others. There are cases where it makes no sense whatsoever, like fast chargers along freeways, things like that. So it is true that this is not one size fits all. It's also the reason why we're not saying do it tomorrow. There needs to be a reasonable timeline worked out for the cost curve to hit the sweet spot and for the technology to hit the sweet spot. So we're looking at 2027. That's what we're pushing for. It could end up being something other than 2027. But that's the reason for the timeline, and that's the reason why we're not looking at all EVs or all EVSE.
So it's Woody. So this is just the chargers, not the vehicles.
It's both.
It's both.
It's both.
New vehicles manufactured 2027 and on.
Yeah. So Woody, my understanding is that this bill has been changed, so it's basically guidance to set a target now, but could you, well, I guess one, clarify that, and then two, tell me about like what are the use cases or the situations where you think that it makes sense? And
yeah, so right. It originally we had 2027. It would have been a bill that's a targets bill that would say by 2027. It is now, if you look at the bill language in that link I sent, it has the other related info. It links directly to the official bill text. And so now it directs the California Energy Commission to work out the optimal timeline. Instead of just saying 2027, it's going to be more of a ongoing deliberation at that agency, and we will be fully engaged there to try to make it as ambitious a target as possible. And I'll just point to school buses. School buses are really probably the poster child of this use case, where you've got these heavy duty vehicles that are or at least medium duty in some cases, but fleet, that have known duty cycles and that are known to be available in the evenings when the ramp hits. And so they do their business, taking kids around during the day, and then they're ready to, with the charge that they have, ready to help with the ramp later in the day. So, so school buses, other fleets are probably a primary candidate. And yeah, like I said, so the bill could end up having a more structured timeline for certain types of use cases. And, I mean, in terms of cost for the vehicles, I would say, we already have a number of Leafs have always had, bidirectionality, other vehicles. Tesla's on board by 2025. So the industry is kind of a mixed bag, but mostly leaning in the direction of doing this anyway. We just want to make sure they all do it.
So I want to jump in. I wasn't going to say a lot about it. I did explore, because both Caleb and I work for a company that made school buses or makes school buses and makes buses and makes trucks for delivery, and brought up with their founder and CEO, used to be CEO, now it's CTO, the idea of vehicle to grid for their vehicles. And he told me, we can put this into the system. It's really not very complicated. It's a few chips and a change of the circuit boards. It won't cost us a lot to do it, but can't find any of the fleets that he works with that have expressed that they would be interested in doing this. And so I put in the discussion group a question also, because I was pushing, and it was an idea that Tor had in a meeting that we had one time, and I thought, hey, that's a brilliant idea. As I dug into it more and more, you start looking at the use case, and it turns out that fleets won't be the best place. Our personal cars are more likely the better place. The reason the school buses was one everybody points about. But if you look at it, for exactly the same reason we had to go get the chargers turned on in the parking lot, was that the use case would be this, is that you'd be collecting the energy during the middle of the day. And after you finish your bus routes, at the end of the day, you want to use the energy then to fill in when we have the dirtiest power and we don't have as many renewables. Unfortunately, the buses will be somewhat empty at that point, but if they wanted to empty even further, then they have to use the power through the night, so they're ready for the run in the morning. So even the school bus one, which looks like you've got something that can charge up during the day, doesn't play out because of the cycle they have. And that was the question I put in the discussion group, was asking the question, do we see that we would change how we do business in order to start balancing the grid? And I only got one response so far in NBEAA discuss on the topic. The home charging, I found that CARB has done a really good job. They're a little bit slow, but CARB's been very good about matching the requirements and regulations in California to move us towards EVs and balancing the grid and all of those elements. So I rely on them. I'm not sure we need the legislation. I think the market pressures will be there. I am not going to buy another car unless it has vehicle to grid in it. And just, it's on my list. You'll see it when we get here. It's on my list of things that, I'm not going to look at the Ford, not going to look at the GM rather, until they have it. By the way, they're looking for a director for their vehicle to grid initiative. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. Is this vehicle to grid, is it also vehicle to home?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of concerned about this scenario that we're slowly replacing grid reliability as a public utility function by privately owned storage. And the question is that like a plausible scenario? And what can be done to divert it from this direction?
Sorry, what could be done to?
Well, it replaces the public utility have responsibility for grid reliability. Now we're introducing privately owned storage in the system that is not restricted to feeding the grid. It is feeding the home. So the pressure on consumers, on grid owners to be reliable diminishes, because some of the reliability is stored in the home environment.
Right.
I've got my hand up. I can respond to that.
Yeah, let Brent respond first. I saw your hand up and I was trying to get some other.
I mean, so there has to be a market, right? Like, so if you're going to put power on the grid, you want to be compensated for that. PG&E has a pilot right now. It's V2X pilot. It's on pause at the moment.
Oh, is it on pause?
Yeah. And what they would do is, even if you had solar, they would be able to track the power that comes from your vehicle, so you wouldn't get like a NEP 2.0 compensation, you get a separate type of compensation for that power you put back onto the grid.
And by the way, that program with PG&E is actually their participation in a DOE program.
Yeah.
Okay. Woody, go ahead, jump in.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, so, great question. I think in this case, this is actually, a case where that private investment is really good, and it's a distributed investment. And this is a case where this is happening anyway. It's a market that is rapidly growing. These EVs are projected to be on the road with that, enormous amount of capacity by 2030. No one will be forced to participate, just like you have a seatbelt in your car, but you're not forced. I mean, there's laws about it, but you're not. Maybe it's not a good analogy, because there are laws that require you to use your seatbelt and you can get a ticket for it. So maybe that's not the best analogy, but this is something where I think you would say that the policymakers are making a decision that this has value, general public benefit value, and that it is a reasonable feature to include, and with the compensation model for that Brant is referring to, and which would be part of it. I don't see the downside really to looking at this as a resource, and there's not some kind of entity that could sort of withhold the benefit just because it's the dollars have come from a distributed pool of private investors, people who buy EVs, fleet managers that buy fleets of EVs. So that's sort of a really beautiful thing that's happening. If you ask me, that it's happening anyway. Let's make the best use. Let's not get to 2030 and smack ourselves on the side of the head and say, "Damn, we shoulda, woulda, coulda." We should make it happen as early as possible.
Okay, Tor has a comment. You have to speak up.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no downside to supporting this. There's work being done to see if we can make the existing fleet of EVs bidirectional, and that's a conversation later, but it's being worked on. To have this option is important. In fact, the CEO of PG&E just a year ago said the capacity of all EVs in PG&E's territory is the equivalent to 3 Diablo Canyons. So 6,000 megawatts. Let's tap into that. That's part of the future. And, limited resources for batteries. We're putting it all into cars. Let's make them do more things because they're sitting in our driveway.
Okay.
I'll say vote for this.
Any more comments? Otherwise, I'm going to call a question.
Yeah, I guess the
Yeah,
comment is, do we have any sense of what this cost would be, and then who's paying for it? I mean, we always have lots of bills, but if we don't know who's paying, what the costs are and who's paying for it, and there's massive equity conversations going on right now around EVs as well.
You're paying for it.
How does that get paid?
I think that's the answer. Yeah. Brad, you had your hand up too.
Yeah, so just two things. I think the PG&E rebate is like 3,000 something, and then it would have additional compensation around 2,000.
But who pays for the PG&E rebate? I mean, the money, the $3,000 comes from somewhere.
Your bill
Comes from the rate.
Does it come from ratepayers or does it come from taxpayers?
So
Rate based.
And then the other one is like, I'm just really curious to tie this to the agenda item about like, what do you want after EV? Like if this is cost competitive with having a power wall at your home, or, a stationary storage, like, is that more valuable to have a battery that you can drive, but also isn't there 24/7,
Yeah. All right, any more comments? I don't see anything up there.
Yeah, my question was actually, and maybe this is more specific, but about when you were speaking about school buses, and I don't know how many electric school buses there are currently. Okay, but do they go through their entire battery capacity every day?
Depends on the route.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends on the route, depends on the supplier for the school bus. So a whole bunch of things.
And summer's a great time.
I would like to interject and just say, I think that folks are getting way too drilled down into some of these sort of minutia about, things that can be worked out between now and 2027. And so this is really about setting a policy direction for the state of California. It's not about working out these details. So I do think that I heard someone say, call the question. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, I'm calling the question. Hey, Prez, you want to run the vote?
Yes, all right. So EVA member or paid EVA members who are in favor, raise your hands.
I would vote.
You're not a paying member? You're not a paying
This is
member?
exposing all of us.
Yeah,
that aren't
4.
paying our dues.
David, is your hand up or not? Oh, that's a dog.
That's a dog.
Oh, I'm sorry, Russ has this up. So that's 5.
Okay. And those opposed?
1. Where's the other one? Oh, okay.
Unless there's somebody scroll down.
That's a problem I have. I can't see everybody here.
They're the non-paying members.
Yeah.
That's right.
Down below.
He's got 2. David's got 2.
You get elevated.
Is that just one? Just one no?
Yeah.
Okay. And those who abstain?
1, 2 in here. 4. You didn't vote.
Yeah, I forgot to vote. I meant to vote earlier. I added myself to the count. So we have 6 yeses, 1 no, and 4 abstains. So it sounds like it passes.
It passes. Okay.
All right, thank you.
It's different.
Thank you all.
Yeah, so
You
I
can speak to it, or
Yeah.
you can speak. I mean, this really hurt me when I
Yeah,
saw
I
this.
was reading the paper about.
I'm sorry, one more thing, if I may. I'd like to know right now, who's going to be the signatory? Typically, we have a signatory on the letter. We'll need the logo, high res.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up with you.
So I was reading the paper a few weeks ago, and I read where Ray had passed away. If you hadn't read the obituary in the paper, it is, Ray was as amazing as he was here. Ray was just generally amazing. He just was genuinely amazing, and I asked to see if she could look up the records. She doesn't have the specific dates of when he joined, but as far as we could find, he was a member since 1994.
Yeah.
From what we can tell.
Yeah, he always would say it.
I've been driving an EV for 30 years, right?
Every meeting he would start with, I've been driving EVs longer than any of you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and then didn't realize that he had retired in '83 as an executive VP for the company that became Sprint. And he was actually, I think he was the chairman of the board he was president and chairman of the board when he retired in '83. The picture of the left of Ray was something that Cecilia had sent me from a meeting back at Agilent in 2004 with his 96 or 8 Selectra. And then there's Ray right there in front of his brown Tesla. And I always loved the color of that car. And I just thought it was the most beautiful brown I've ever seen. And Ray was always so proud of it. I remember when he would always say that, I thought he said his daughter wouldn't let him drive anymore.
No, I'm sorry. But I have to jump in at this point.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to tell a story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because for me, Ray was a role model for me.
Yes.
He and I manned tables a couple of times to talk EVs. And I can remember one at Cutting Town, and he drove there to man the table because his daughter couldn't drive because she was, something wrong with her leg or whatever else. So Ray drove at age 96. And at age 98, Ray finally told me, my license just expired and I'm not going to renew it because I really shouldn't be driving at this age. I can also remember when the fire occurred and his house was burnt down. 2017, so that's just 6 years ago, so at age 95, and he was working on the plans to rebuild the house. I think in the end, he decided not to do it. But he was a man who, for me, never stopped living and always found things to do. It was always interesting. I really am gonna miss him. And it's the case where those of us who are getting older, I guess we all get older, look at it and go, God damn it, he was so young.
Yes.
So,
The bottom right-hand corner says there is a memorial service on Saturday, May 27th at 11 at Church of the Roses. I don't know where that is. I know Chapel of the Roses, so I'll have to look up Church of the Roses, but this will be in the.
Oh, is that the one on Patio Court behind Montgomery Village?
I need to look it up.
That
I did
would be
not
well,
did
yeah.
not find it, but this will be in the deck, so you can look it up.
yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna move us forward.
Yeah, of course.
But what I will say, so a couple of us went to, gonna be so bad with names, but we had a member die, about 3 or 4 months ago, and a couple of us went, say, I think hopefully we'll have a show of support for Ray at his service, because I'm just messaging my home calendar to make sure I got that date reserved.
27.
Okay, who's involved in Earth Day? Sonia's been driving this. And Bernie's not here. Who else is?
I volunteered, but I haven't heard anything.
Okay. I've seen the notification that we have the booth, we paid for the booth, there's room for a car or 2 cars. They want us to put cardboard into the cars so that no oil hits the pavement. And I was gonna write back to them, but Sonia finally did and said, well, they're EVs and they don't leak as far as we know.
That's right.
Anyways.
Yeah, so we'll be there noon to 4 on Earth Day with 2 cars. I think there's a conversion and a new model, something from somebody. I forgot who.
Elena, are you guys going?
Yeah, my dad, John, and I are going to be there with the truck. So.
Yeah, and I'll be there.
Should be fun.
Sonia's going to be there.
And I have to tell you, last time I did this, and I met so many people who got involved later on with EVs and environmental stuff. Be prepared to use up your voice because people want to talk to you. I went home with a sore throat.
All right. This is a slide I put together. It's from an article by Cal Matters discussing data from the Energy Commission. And it talked about who is actually able to afford EVs, where they're most concentrated. And they looked at zip codes, and of the zip codes with the 20 zip codes with the highest number of EVs, they found that it's predominantly white, and Asian, home values of at least 1.25 million, as according to Zillow's home value index, and at least $100,000 median income. The article also includes a few stories about people who purchase EVs, and they have this neat little. There's a screenshot here. This neat little infographic. It's interactive. You can click on the different positions, and it'll show you the highlighted areas of where those EVs are, and including some statistics of the area.
Oh, I put this slide together. The problem with me presenting is I can't see the notes the way this is set up. So I can't remember who sent it in. I might have sent this one in. But basically, this is actually, I'm hoping we'll get more information on this. At the federal level, Biden has been working on changing agreements we have with Japan, Korea, and Europe. Even though we don't have free trade agreements with them, that there would be aspects which would then make it so that Japanese, Korean, and European cars would now qualify for some or all of the IRA money. once they sign the agreements. In the case of the EU, they said that might take them longer because they have to get each member state to say, yes, we also agree. Korea might happen sooner. We've already signed with Japan. We'll see what it all looks like and how it starts to work out. That would make something like the Ariva from Nissan would now be qualified for our IRA money. The EV6, the Ioniq 5, and many of the others. It would not include China. So getting a Chinese model it wouldn't be there. Oh, and by the way, the UAW is not in favor of this.
Jerry, on the supply chain is Chinese batteries or Chinese cars, or yes to both?
Both. For Chinese, yeah.
For Chinese batteries too, like Cattle, which is providing
Right,
Ford batteries and Tesla batteries.
There's actually that division, as far as I know, and Sonia's looked at this more than I have, is the IRA is basically in two pieces. It's the battery and then the manufacturer of the vehicle.
Yeah, I think at every step of production of the battery in the vehicle, no more than 50% of the value added can be from a non free trade.
Yeah, and there's a raw material clause in there as well.
Yeah, so there's like two halves of it. There's like 37.
Anyway, I thought it was worthwhile mentioning this one. Keep your eyes open. You're getting ready to buy a car and you're buying a new car. You might want to look at waiting a little bit.
So I made this slide. This is an article that Zeno submitted that discussed the recently passed fossil fuel ban in the European Union. It was, I think, about mid-February that the European Parliament passed this law, essentially banning the sale of new fossil fuel cars in the EU starting in 2035. And I found it interesting that it seemed like a big motivation for passing this law was actually to keep the EU competitive in the EV market. And there seemed to be kind of this fear that if something like this law weren't passed, then China and the US would just totally outpace European automakers in this market, which makes sense. And from what I read, there does seem to be an awareness that the cost of EVs must come down in order for this transition to really be effective, as we all know. And the article discussed the idea of the Havana effect, which you may be familiar with. That's essentially where if Europeans can't afford an electric car, then the fear is that they'll just continue driving older gas burning vehicles. And of course, there was a fair amount of pushback for this from several of the EU countries, saying that the fear that this ban was too dramatic of a shift, that it would result in the loss of jobs. And Germany specifically pushed for the law to allow for the use of e-fuels in cars past 35. And this actually was accepted, and now ICE cars that use carbon neutral fuels are being allowed past the 2035 deadline. Oh yeah, and the law also, oh sorry, one more thing. The law also requires that starting in 2030, new cars must reduce their CO2 emissions by 55% from 2021 levels. Okay.
So I put this one together, kind of following up. Maybe I'm sure Woody has some comments on this one. One of the biggest factors of getting everything transformed over to the green side is some of these challenges on interconnect. Press Democrat had an article on just connectivity. The one that they talked about last, I think it's almost been a year, August, was connecting two big warehouses over off of Aviation Boulevard. It's just getting these buildings connected. But there's a number of other projects that are in queue. 134 projects are ready for interconnection. 35 are delayed more than 12 weeks. Affordable housing projects are also affected, some as much as 18 months. And the next slide, which I'm not going to show, is an entire slide of legislation that California Congress is taking to legislate the outcome within the state. Texas has the exact same problem. If anybody's ever driven through West Texas, as soon as you hit the border of West Texas coming out of New Mexico, there is just vast fields of turbines out there for wind. 110 gigawatts is in interconnection at the end of 21. And then this New York Times article talks about there's, as of the end of 2021, 8,100 projects nationwide are in queue at the end of 2021.
Last
So,
April, when I flew over Nebraska,
yeah,
places that you don't expect. Nebraska is just
yeah.
coated with windmills.
Yeah, it's amazing. Texas is just full of wind and solar. It shocks you when you see it. And then I included this quote up here from Mike McGuire. This is from the Press Democrat paper, and you look at the doublespeak that the politicians are having to work their way through here, right? Recognizing that a lot of this transmission system has been built over the last century, and we needed to modernize it a decade ago, right? And so he says it's kind of abundantly clear that PG&E has some pretty significant constraints around capacity and antiquated transmission, but it shouldn't have to take the state and communities to get involved. And that second quote was tied to fixing broken things in Humboldt and Mendocino County following I forgot what it was up there. There was an earthquake, I think, up there that they lost major capacity up there. So,
well, it was Jeff Cypress who informed us once about the limitations of installing solar and buying EVs up north because PG&E's power lines or the transmission lines are not.
That's right.
Safe enough. It's not so much that they aren't big enough; they're just not safe enough. And so that's, yeah,
that's right.
It's going to be a while for it to get there.
So I'm sure, like I said, there's a whole page. The next page, which is hidden in this deck, is
it's hidden.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't want to show it because it's way too much, but but there's literally a page at this font of all of the, and no pictures, of California legislating going, go faster.
What?
And it's
I'm
not
going to
really.
point something out. If you hit it, then likely on the PDF, it's not going to be there either.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I thought the whole deck got posted. It wasn't.
No, anything was hidden. It's what we present.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, maybe we should pop it up then and repeat that because there's a lot of stuff. Not right now, Jerry.
Yeah.
Not now. We can do it later. Yeah. So it's a big factor. I don't know if you had any comments on that from your role here or.
Yeah, I'm trying to track all of those. There were so many bills.
Yeah.
I think AB 1482 is one that I've heard discussed a lot, but a lot of them seem to have 125-day requirements for energization.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how PG&E does that since they've got 12 to 18 months right now, but.
Seem not to have a lot of spare money and staff to throw out either.
Right.
All right, I put
Just a question.
Yeah.
It sort of begs, it's like, those are all the symptoms, but what's the big picture about modernizing the grid? Who's involved with that? PG&E, it's your job, but there's the ISO, there's layers of complexity.
And it's not just California. So the only place that stands alone is,
countrywide, right?
the only place that stands alone from a grid perspective is Texas with ERCOT.
Right.
Right? Texas has blocked off Texas and I think a little bit of Oklahoma, but everybody else is tied, we're tied to the western grid and there's the eastern grid. And this is not an insignificant challenge.
I mean, and then they're planning major offshore wind in Humboldt County. So, who's going to pay for the it's all these little questions about modernizing the grid.
Right.
These are just symptoms.
Yeah, that's right.
And so
And transmission lines.
it begs for a deeper dive
I
another
heard
day.
that there's a shortage of electrical engineers to really plan out all these systems.
That too.
Yeah, power engineering is not the sexy stuff when it comes to being a double E, right?
a lot of advertisements for them right now too. I see it too. I put this slide together when the announcements now come out, the rollouts coming out later this year. On top of the same platform as your EV6 and the Ioniq 5, they've now put the Kia EV9. So it's basically the same system. Charging, you'll get 150 miles worth of range in 15 minutes. Not too bad. It's coming with either a 99.8 kilowatt hour battery, so over a 300-mile range. And for some reason, with the all-wheel drive, they always end up with smaller batteries and a little bit less range, a lot more power. It has 120-volt outlets, which I'm sure we're going to see in all the vehicles coming forward. CCS charging now becomes the standard for just about everybody. Part of what I like about this, and I think your car will do it too, I think you can tow with your car. This one will tow almost 3 tons. So at that point, now you don't need a pickup, you just need a folding trailer. It has all-terrain driving as well. And the seats are reversible, so it seats 7. You can either get it seating 6 or seating 7, so if you have a large family. And the front seats, both the driver and the passenger seat, will reverse around. And the second row seats, you can have a different kind of seating and use it for all kinds of things. It has 2 displays, which I'm sorry I didn't show here, that are 12-inch displays that have one is right in front of the driver, one is where you might find it in the Tesla. That have all of the controls. They also have tactile controls.
I'll show that in my review next.
Okay, good.
Jerry, yeah.
Oh, you have that in yours, yeah.
Yeah, I'll show how that works.
Yeah.
Next month.
And they said they're focusing more and more on zero waste, so they're using recycled bottles to make a lot of the interior pieces, hopefully not the structure. It has level 3 driving, which basically says today in today's Leaf, you take your hand off the wheel for 8 seconds. Here you take your hand off the wheel until the car says, I need a little bit of help. So it's near the level or at the level that most of the Teslas are today. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to hit that. Come on.
Question before you do that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go that far. And it hit us in the 3rd quarter. It's going to be expensive.
That was my question. Is there a target?
This was
tag?
pre-announcement, and the announcement I saw it pop up in my email yesterday, and I didn't look at what the prices were. I don't think they're even telling, they're not gonna tell you the prices. They say they want these options, yeah.
70, 80,000.
It's up there, yeah.
So what's the weight of this car? And what is the ratio of, the efficiency ratio of weight versus the power?
What, are you putting 7 people in it, putting 1 person in it?
No, the car itself.
No, what ratio to the car, wait, but if you do that, you say that for a bus.
Well, that's true.
Just do a little math, miles divided by kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know what other vehicles or what the kilowatt hour capacity of other people's vehicles are. Do you guys know? Like,
Yeah, this one's 99.8, right?
Sure, I see that one, but like for your Leafs or.
My Leaf is 45.
Mine's
The EV6
77.
Yeah.
77.
Most
No,
of
I
the
thought that
Teslas
was
are
a
around
lot. I
70.
just didn't know.
So this is more.
Yeah.
So we don't know the weight of the car? There's no weight?
No.
Is that hard to find out or?
It's made of plastic bottles.
Once it gets released and you look at the sticker, we'll see that in a second when we get to the presentation, if we get to the presentation.
Yeah, so going by these standards, it's 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. I think my 2016 Leaf is like 4.1, 4.2.
Yeah. I'm only getting to 4.
Hey, Jerry,
Yeah.
can you go back? There's one comment I want to call out. Purchasable extended features. So
Oh,
I've
yeah.
done a
So-
little bit of work on that.
Software.
That's some of that
That's a
stuff.
lot. Yeah.
Some of that stuff is stuff that you like.
Yeah.
Stuff that's in the car.
Yeah.
And you've got to pay either a subscription
Unlock it.
or there's a paywall to unlock it.
Yeah,
Stuff
yeah.
you guys been doing for years with your solar
Yeah, I didn't put all the ones there because they had a list of what the features were. And some of them are, oh, I want that feature. You go on the web and say you want that feature. And essentially, as you said,
Yeah.
it then unlocks it. It's in the car already.
You want a seat heater? Well, it's already there.
Yeah.
That's right. It's stuff like that. It's stuff like the accessible to use the heated seats or the heat pump or things like crazy things like, wait, that's not in. Oh, you want it? It's kind of a, do you want a steering wheel? Kind of some of the stuff.
So I'm old enough that I know enough about computers that in the old days when the Digital Equipment Corporation was around, they sold computers at different sizes. They all had the same processor. It's a question of where the jumper was because it's easier to make. And when I worked for Xilinx, we made very large memory chips. And if we're selling you a small chip, we blew half of it. So you got a smaller chip because manufacturing costs. And that's the way these things start to roll out. And I think Tesla pretty much started it.
No, you guys, the 1968 Yamaha motorcycle, but the electric start was disconnected by a wire inside the headlight. So you could have like a $300 option that you could plug in. So don't think it started with technologies in the 90s.
Yeah, corporate control or proprietary type technology is nothing new.
Yeah.
I put this slide together because I saw an article on this. It was a really interesting article. I suggest reading the full article. But the basic question that we often have when people talk to us about electric cars is, where's the lithium coming from? Lithium is the 27th most common element in the planet. And the problem with lithium has been that it was so bloody cheap, nobody could afford to harvest it because you couldn't make any money on it. Since 2010, lithium's price has gone up tenfold. And at this point, the cost of mining lithium, in most cases, there's almost a 10x factor margin that they have for most of the methods for getting it today. So we're getting more and more of it. Here's the curious thing. Suddenly, lithium prices dropped by 20% because it's like hype in a lot of other things. Bitcoins go to $77,000 a Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoins were 9 cents. Now they're at $20,000. They probably should stay around $20,000. Same thing's going to happen with lithium. It's going to find a settling point based on the different manufacturing methods and the competition. And the competition is starting to become greater as far as we get more and more supply locations. Instead of 1 or 2 places in the world, we'll harvest it here in the States. And just the promise that that's going to happen has started pushing the prices down. Some think that it will go back up again, but others think it is going to continue to come down. The supply has to increase 52-fold by 2050, given projections of how much lithium we're going to need. But as far as everybody says, that should be no problem because it's an entire industry that's now being created. Anyway, there's a great article to find out that the margin's so unbelievably high right now on lithium was interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to add a counterpoint.
Well, let me finish.
Well, about that, yeah.
No, let me finish.
Yeah, but you made
because the other example
you made
was
a soothing remark, and I want to just point out that in the last week, there's a lot of South America and 3 most foremost important lithium producing countries. And the press is described as a lithium OPEC.
Yeah.
So they want to band together to create pressure on the market to have stable prices that are profitable for each country.
But
so
that won't last very long.
Well, I mean, you think it's everywhere, but it's not everywhere.
It is almost everywhere.
Not in the way it's there.
It's in the ocean.
Well, the energy it would take to get it out is immense.
Anyway, so one of the stories I remember was when Caleb and I were working with sodium chloride, nickel sodium chloride batteries. The manufacturer told us, if I could buy 12 tons instead of 1 ton at a time, I can reduce the price of the battery by 50%. That's the same thing is starting to happen here. We're starting to see the volumes. So the commodity price is going down. The other thing I got out of that article was both, it turns out that one of the reasons the price is high isn't because of the constraint in the mining, it's the constraint in the manufacturing, that is the distillation of the lithium. Not enough facilities. And both GM and Tesla are now building distillation facilities to take it from the ore to get to the element.
Do you have any idea how dense lithium is? And the reason I asked that is because you were saying like
how dense it is?
Yeah, because you said in the example, if you buy 12 times as much, 12 tons or something like that, then the price drops by 50% per ton, I'm guessing. Yeah. But how much space is that? Like, is the cost?
In that case, that was nickel. That was nickel that he was talking about, not lithium.
Okay.
And lithium is a very light element, so
it's highly reactive.
That's why we use it. Because it's highly reactive.
Like, is transportation where the major cost efficiencies come from when you're transporting more of it at once?
No, it has to just to do with the way markets work. You get higher volumes, the prices go down. Even when you buy, you go someplace and you went to Home Depot, I buy some plastic. If I bought 2, it's $3.50. If I buy 16, it's $11. Okay, this one I put together as well. Supposedly, combustion vehicle sales have now peaked. That is that we're now selling less combustion vehicles per year than, so we've reached peak combustion vehicle sales. Supposedly, we're going to reach peak oil demand by 2027. So everybody always talked about peak oil being, we're going to run out of oil. Well, actually, we're running out of demand for oil. And Shell is admitting that the oil demand economy has already been reached, and they're shifting all their investing into renewables and electric and whatever else. They've done quite a bit actually even here in buying different companies.
Free lots.
So is this United States or worldwide?
That's worldwide.
The EV, the first line was worldwide?
This is worldwide.
Yeah, it's worldwide.
Zeno, China, the most populous nation in the world, manufactures 80 EV models. We're not even close to that.
Right.
Okay.
This is my sample.
Oh, you did this one? Okay, good.
Yeah. So this
Okay.
this article was submitted by David, and it's about B2U Storage Solutions, which is a startup company in Southern California. And they're proposing and also implementing a solution to this question we're going to have to address, which is what to do with used EV batteries. And I learned something new from this article, that once an EV battery reaches the 70 to 80% capacity, which happens maybe at about the 8-year mark, I think, then they're essentially no longer suitable for EV use, but they still have a lot of storage life in them. So what B2U has done is at this facility in Lancaster, they've taken 1,300 of these used batteries that are specifically from Nissan and Honda EVs, and they're using them to store solar power and then sell it on the wholesale market, which is really kind of one of the first companies to do it in this way. And this facility in Lancaster down here in the bottom, it can store 25 megawatt hours of electricity, which I thought was pretty cool. And they use a technology called EV pack storage, which essentially doesn't require any disassembly or reconfiguration of the batteries, which I thought was really cool. As you can see in the picture on the right, those are Nissan Leaf battery packs, kind of as is out of the car. And to me, this is really a win-win. It keeps the valuable yet kind of toxic battery components out of the landfill, and it greatly reduces the cost of storing solar energy. So they're hoping to expand to other projects in California and Texas. But I thought this is a really cool company doing a real thing here.
So a couple of things to add to that. One is Mike has his 2011 Leaf. When I bought my 2011 Leaf, part of the marketing was that Nissan had already established reuse of the battery packs when they ran out on the Leafs. That is, in day one, when they introduced the very first one, they planned on using them for stationary storage and started putting a facility together that would repackage them. So they were doing repackaging in that case. This one's really nice because they don't repackage. Other thing to point out, the 8 years, California, our regulations are that the vehicles must maintain 80% of their capacity for 8 years or 100,000 miles, whichever occurs first. And so that's part of the threshold as well as to why that happens. And it's also in the state of California, you can't have a car that needs to be tuned up in the first 100,000 miles. So
yeah, oh, cool. Yeah, and I thought it was neat too that their system, the EPS battery pack storage system, it essentially prevents the weaker batteries with the lower capacity from limiting the output of the stronger batteries. And it's this kind of system that allows them, just like you're saying, to be as is without much reconfiguration. So yeah, pretty cool.
Before we go to this one, Jerry, if we had a conversation about, this is great that batteries have a home after 8 years. The auto industry, though, has a 25-year inventory turnover. Does anybody, we had a conversation about what happens between year 9 and year 25 for the rolling stock of these, the rest of the vehicle that are going away. I mean, that is a.
You mean, what are we gonna do with all the possible fuel
What are
vehicles?
what are we gonna do with all the tires and the frames and who's gonna put 13 grand into a 12-year-old car?
So what I've from the auto industry is that increasingly they're assuming that the batteries will last the life of the vehicle, that like the vehicle might actually fall apart first. And I think vehicle recycling is like 98% of the vehicle.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty high.
Okay.
By the way, a friend of mine had contacted me 4 years ago, and he said, let's work on, I'm gonna call these guys in India, have them do the software. Let's work on putting a system together to take the packs and do exactly what these guys have done. And I looked at it, and that's exactly what happened. I don't think the turnover is gonna be what everybody expects the turnover is gonna be. There's two things that are gonna happen with the batteries that make this maybe not the future. One is the batteries are lasting so much longer.
They are, yeah.
And it's 2011, Mike's 2011 versus even 2013.
Right.
The change in the anodes made a big difference. But the second thing is they're highly recyclable as well. And a lot of the industry is looking to get the lithium back out of those packs. So,
Because to the question about brand life, the life of the vehicle, the batteries should last the life of the vehicle. What's the expected life of the vehicle? Just 10-year, like all our appliances?
Yeah, I mean, in California, it's like 19, mostly because we don't salt the roads here.
19.
Across the country, it's 12 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of it's.
I think what you're going to find now is that because the batteries are becoming more and more precisely manufactured and their lifetimes are being extended, it's like they're talking about million-mile batteries in passenger cars. So I think the years of the early Nissan Leaf batteries failing after single buyer use are over. Those batteries were not thermally managed. There were a lot of challenges with them, and now we're to that point where a million-mile battery in a passenger car is probably more the standard.
Well, actually, that brings up an interesting point, Caleb, about measuring a car's lifespan by miles instead of by manufacturer year. So it may not be 10 years if they don't drive nearly as much.
Charge cycles.
Yeah.
Because it used to be the rubber
Absolutely.
parts around the car, right?
Yeah.
Metal lasts forever. It's the rubber parts that fall out, right?
Well, the engine wore out too.
Yeah, that's right.
350,000 miles on my Honda Accord that I drove for 20 years, had one rebuilt engine in it, and it was in great shape till I gave it to somebody and it fell apart. Okay, who's got that one?
I got this one. So I was invited to this through the president of the World Affairs Council. David Calloway used to work for USA Today, and he was a foreign correspondent for Bloomberg News. And he's doing a talk this coming Wednesday on talking about the politics of climate change. And I think the basic narrative is how do we manage climate change and defeat global warming? And, we've been trying to work on the Paris Accord and all this. And what if that just gets to be too hard, politically too hard? And so I think he's presenting a case that we can get there with technology alone. And so the event is Tuesday, 14th, is that Wednesday this week, and it's around the corner from here, 4 p.m. and it's free. And if you're interested in hearing this, former editor-in-chief of USA Today speak,
come to my center.
Come to the center. Go to Jerry's center. That's right. That's right. So I'll plan to be there. So I'll see you there.
At one point, I did send out to us put the program together. We should put this under events so people will know about an event coming up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't realize there was an event.
Yeah, there's an event.
Okay.
There's a tab. There wasn't a tab for events. Is that gone?
No, it's back there, but I
Okay,
wasn't sure if it was I thought that was group events or club events.
No. It's any events.
Yeah, okay.
We do announcements on that. And I'm not going out to the next screen for some reason, just saying. Go. Why am I not advancing? Just a second.
Can I ask you a question? or comment about events. Just on the Apple Blossom Parade, the Citizen of the Year, who's the lead guy, riding in a Caribbean. So, there you go, representation.
My computer just did the thing. I've been looking at comments, whatever else on my iPad, and it just decided it's a second screen. I've got to get back so I can do something. This one.
Are you queuing up your presentation?
It's in here.
Okay, can I ask you a question while you queue it up? Or a comment?
Now I'm screwed up here, so.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
So I had a conversation with the engineer from DC Bell who makes the bidirectional B2G plus solar inverter. One of the things she said was, I was asking about legacy vehicles. She said, oh, they're working on it. I said, well, who? GM and PG&E are testing. Which suggests a software solution for existing cars. And I've never got a straight answer whether that's true. And so the reason they're like, want to see how it affects warranty, et cetera. Any backup on that little tidbit of just verbal communication?
Particularly CCS needs, that's a standards issue.
Standards issue, but on an existing car, is it upgradable via a software upgrade? Or is there some technical, physical thing in the car that's going to keep it from being B2G-able? That comment suggested that it's software.
Yeah.
Kind of what Jerry applied in his work on the buses, right? Or maybe, were you working on the buses too?
Well, it was a name drop me, but.
It was a chip, it was related, it was a small dollar change. It wouldn't require a new.
Yeah.
Inverter or whatever, yeah. I thought it was.
It's mostly the software handshake, I think.
Okay, so the hardware supports it. The hardware supports it. Doesn't care which way the line goes to go.
There's like 2 standards that are being worked on for CCS. VW has done this like with their, in other markets, you know, as kind of like a non-standard solution.
Right, so it's not a clear answer as to whether cars on the road eventually will be B2G.
I just don't see a lot of backwards compatibility out there. Like people don't like seem incentivized to kind of do that extra mile for existing hardware, but.
Well, if it's hardware, yeah, that's a little more challenging, but Tesla downloads upgrades all the time, right?
I have to apologize, I have to run to go get my daughter.
All right, I think I'm back where I'm supposed to be here. There we go.
Okay, great. This is actually my slide, so one more piece of news here. This was an article from Sonia. I really enjoyed it, very well written. It compared the total CO2 emissions throughout the life cycle of both a gas car and an electric car in Canada specifically. And I just found it kind of an interesting comparison. So on the graph on the left, you'll see the y-axis represents tons of CO2 emitted. And then we have a gas burning car on the right, and on the left, and an electric car on the right. And I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting. The make of the car in gray was about the same amount of CO2 emitted, as was the maintenance in dark blue. Then you have the make of the battery versus the make of the gasoline, which is about, half as much to make the battery. And then, of course, as we all know, the burning of the gasoline versus the electricity is quite different. But I don't know, I thought it was interesting, though, that even if it's from dirty electricity, which is represented by the yellow here, which is about what 20% of Canadians use, versus the green little bar, which is what 80% of Canadians use, a much more clean electricity. So, even if it's dirty electricity such as that from a coal power plant, the burning of the gasoline still far overwhelms, everything else in this chart here. So I don't know, I just thought that was kind of an interesting comparison to really think about the full life cycle. And then yet, despite all this, last year, I think it was like 24 million gas burning cars were registered in Canada, and very few electric cars in comparison were registered. So if we look at the graph on the right, this shows the percentage of new car sales that were electric in 2022 for various countries around the world. We have the global average at about 9%, and Canada in yellow there as a whole fell below that at about 6%. You can also see it's kind of a cool comparison. California in green at 18%. And then of course, Norway way up at 78% there. So kind of the next.
Where's the United States?
2 below California, or is that the UK or United
That's the
States?
UK. They actually don't have the US on here. I'm not sure why. It may even be below below Canada there. I'm not sure. But yeah, unfortunately, this article is very heavily geared towards Canadian EVs, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. So kind of then the next question that comes up is, why are Canadians adopting EVs at a slower rate than kind of the global average? And of course, it appears largely to do with profits. There's just not as much incentive in Canada for legacy automakers to sell these EVs as compared with, you know, the SUVs and the trucks that are just very profitable. So the article proposed that one way to change this is to use the polluter pays principle, meaning require the gasoline taxes and vehicle emissions taxes. That has been very effective in some European countries like Norway. And the author proposes that this is a more effective way of increasing EV sales than offering EV incentives, which is interesting. But, you know, unfortunately, because of this kind of lack of incentive for the automakers, it has led to long wait times for EV purchase and just very limited options for the more affordable EV models. So anyway, I found these are 2 articles by Barry Saxifrage, I think, from the National Observer. I thought he had really interesting points and graphics. And anyway, so if anyone's interested, I recommend checking him out over there.
One of the things that didn't make it into here was a graphic that I got of what the different vehicles were that were available right now. And I was blown away to find out we've got some that are now listed, EVs listed at $26,000 and $27,000 without incentives. So we're getting there. All right, ready to go into the presentation, boss? Yeah.
How about we cut Bruce off earlier?
Oh yeah.
Since I know we're running really late, but
yeah. Bruce.
Yo. Can you hear?
And anything else you want to lay on us?
Just initial findings with this Ford pickup. It's the quietest EV that I've owned. It's amazing. And that's with heavy duty street tires, which for me are essentially off-road as well. They can pull 10 tons. My brother took it for about a month and pulled his Kubota tractor around with it, no problem. It gets anywhere from 1.8 to about the best on the freeway, maybe going 55, maybe 2.2 to 2.4 miles per kilowatt. So that is a downside. But for my location, where I plan to do short hauls and haul a boat trailer around for short hauls and can produce my own power, I think it's a great solution. And at least it gets people to thinking about the potential of having more electric pickups on the road. So that's sort of my summary at the moment. And if anybody has any questions or tests that I can do to try it out, I posted the battery capacity, and one of the things that works for me is in lieu of buying battery storage for this newer old house, or this older new house that I moved to, I had my other one all tricked up. I'm using the pickup truck as the battery backup, and it's sold with a, I haven't seen it and I've paid for it, and they can't explain why it's not been delivered yet. But basically it's like a critical load panel through the charging. So it's a vehicle to home, but it can isolate the the rest of the grid so that they don't electrocute our local community co-op electricians. And that's supposed to be delivered sometime, but there's some pretty peculiar answers to these questions right now. We're trying to find out why this wasn't delivered. And the short answer they gave, well, we have a recall on a windshield wiper motor. And my brother and I are going, what's that got to do with the charging system? And you know, they're kind of blocking the upper level of what's going on. So I think there might be some re-engineering going on that they haven't talked about, but so far they've sent no safety warnings out or recalls.
All right, so let's move into the presentation. We're running late. Why is that an empty slide? What should I be asking you? That was the, and I'm gonna go through this really fast as what I put down on my list. But I want to see what everybody else is thinking too. First of all, I did a little bit looking, and one of the things that I've discovered is that the stickers that are on the vehicles, by the way, are mandated and actually have a name for these stickers. And the format of them is fixed, but it doesn't necessarily address the questions we want to ask, all the questions we might want to ask about a vehicle. But here's some of the ones that I picked up off the web of different stickers, what they look like. It has to include the make, the model, the trim, the serial number, the manufacturer's MSRP. So that's where we find out what the prices are on these things, as well as what the weight would be on it. The engine transmission specifications. Most EVs don't have transmissions, but it's required to have that on there. The standard equipment and warranty information, and then the optional equipment and chargers. It's been amended so that these are called, this is my going from PowerPoint back to Google. These are called Monroney stickers, after the guy who had the legislation. So they added the EPA city and highway fuel economy rating, which we don't care about, and the crash test ratings. We probably want to know more than what's actually shown on the typical label. This is what's required on a label. Now, this whole thing with the driving range, that's something reasonably new that they're starting to show on here. I think I have another slide. Boy, this got scrambled. Hang on a second. The rest of the presentation disappeared. Okay, there we go. So here's the one for the Bolt EUV. And it shows all of the different options up there, but I was looking for things that I cared about and I couldn't find them. If you look at, zoom in a little bit more, the things that we start talking about are what seats does it have, what kind of fabric does it have, and a bunch of other things that from the EV point of view kind of misses the point on the EV. Now, every car, I had somebody contacted me from San Francisco saying, what should I be looking for in an EV? Which one do I want? And my question to her was, if you went out to go buy a car, which one do you want? What are you looking for? Now, not all the models are the same. These models have an entirely different set of requirements, and they're entirely safe. They have foam rubber bumpers and foam rubber sides, and they don't go too far. And I looked at this one. This is what from the Kia EV6 before I could find it at a dealer's. It was at a show, and it's showing 290 watt hours per mile. My old Honda got 3.7 ounces per mile, or my old Honda got 960 watt hours per mile. So I don't think I think in miles per kilowatt hour.
That is the European standard, though.
Is that right? Okay.
In Canada, they talk about gallons per.
Anyway, they've added this now to the EV labels. Here's from an F-150. So we see what the driving range looks like and what the charge time looks like. So those start taking us towards some of the things that we care about. And that's 250 volt charging. This came from last month, but I thought, hey, this is still part of that synopsis. I like the way that they did this, and I wish it was on the labels. Here it's showing what's the 10-minute charge time and the 20-minute charge time. So how far can I go after a 10-minute charge? And how much further can I go after a 20-minute charge? And that puts two things together, which we'll see later on when we get down into here in my list. Anyway, what I find important is not in the equipment list. So here is what my list looked like. I want CCS quick charge with over 250 kilowatt. I want a 300 plus mile range. I want the efficiency to be at a certain level. What's interesting about that one chart that talks about a 10-minute charge and a 20-minute charge, it puts together what's my charge speed and what's my efficiency of my vehicle, at the same time showing you one set of numbers. I probably want a heat pump and heated seats or some way to not use my driving range up while I'm trying to get comfortable. In fact, I'd like to have a way to defrost the windshield. It's not so much ice for me, but around here you get a lot of vapor. Yeah, you can't see. I prefer 600 plus volt charging system. Now, why do I have that on my list? I get down to the next page why I care about those things. B2G support. Full driver assist cruise. Ray and I used to talk about this a lot when we talked about the automated driving in the vehicles. It's not the automated driving that I like, it's the car telling me, whoa, you're gonna run into somebody, or you're going off the road. All those safety features are there. I'm still driving, but it's assisting me so that when I doze off, I don't end up wrapped around somebody else's car. Some color other than black. I don't know why they all want to start with black. I want a white car or a red car, something that's going to reflect heat. And gray, I stopped buying gray cars because every gray car I ever had got run into. Because people don't see it because the same color as the road. So I'm going, they should out. Woody, would you work on that? I want some legislation that says cars may not be gray after 2027. Proven durability.
Get on that, Jerry. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Durability on the battery chemistry, and that's starting to show up more and more. We're seeing different chemistries. A 110 outlet would be great to have. California now does require, it's not required, it's actually so well suggested to the manufacturers that they include a 220 charge cord with the vehicle.
They don't anymore.
They don't anymore?
Well, the EV6 didn't have a charge cord at all.
Is that right?
Yeah, come with anything.
Well, if we go look back and we look back at the CARB, it's the regulations coming up, is to have a requirement for it. There's a hit against the manufacturer if they don't have it. They can do it without it, but there's a hit. Some limitations occur. I like to have it qualify for the rebates because I like to spend less. And it has to fit in the hangar under the wing of the plane, which is, I'm just marginal with 2018 Nissan Leaf. I have to park diagonally under the wing. Otherwise, I got to pull the plane out in order to park the car in there. It's a pain in the pipe. Now, my wife says it has to have a driver configuration memory so that when she goes in, she says, I'm in the car, fix the mirror, fix the seat. And it needs room for the dog's kennel.
Sounds like a relationship problem.
It really is, yeah. So here was the input from all of you when I put this out on Discuss. The price has to be competitive and fit my budget. It has to have efficiency, B2G stations that support it, because the stations are different. Room for the family, enough seats, a track record with the manufacturer. And then Sonia added a bunch. And I'll leave it from there and go on to the next one, because then I explain why did I want what I wanted. I ran into and tried to do a 288-mile trip with the Nissan Leaf with a 160-mile range. I had to charge twice, and It charged really nicely the first time, but then the second time it was charging really slowly.
But you did meet the requirement to take a full day of driving to do it.
Leisure trip.
Yeah. I want to be able to do round trips to the Bay Area, never worrying about charging.
That's right.
And sometimes with 160 miles, I have to worry about it. Better efficiency and less time pushing the defrost button. I turn the defroster on, I turn the defroster off, I turn the defroster on.
That's back to the relationship issue.
Yeah, I know. And DJ keeps saying to me, keep your eye on the road. And I'm going, I'm turning the defroster off, that's all. On the Prius, they have the button on the steering wheel, so you don't have to worry about it. But on the Leaf, you gotta look for it and push off to the side. The V2G support, because I've got 12.5 kilowatt hours on the side of my house, which is just about, if I'm really efficient in the house, an all electric house, running me for a day. So if the sun comes out, I'm good. The sun doesn't come out, it didn't one time, then I'm not good. But the cars, this one car, which is the low end, has 45 kilowatt hours. Now, Grant was talking about the vehicle to grid stations being expensive. That's probably if you're trying to push 50 kilowatts or trying to push 100 kilowatts. But most of the ones that you're putting in your garage are pushing 7.7, so they match the same thing that you find out with a 40 amp 220 line.
I'm wondering if that might be all the tie-in requirements. Now that you've got a hot load on the line, that you now need to disconnect from PG&E in a way that you know what I mean? You now start down a dealing with grid tie connectivity.
Yeah, but none of that stuff is clear to me yet. And when I've talked to even people who are doing the manufacturing, it's not clear how the tie occurs. And so V2G has a way to go in its specifications. Even the fact that the different vehicles don't work with different V2G stations. The standard's there, but there's nuances to it that have not been worked out. I got spoiled with safety on the Leaf. I mean, the Leaf has really gotten me so that it's easy to drive, and I don't have to think too hard. I've already explained the get hot. The new batteries are all doing about 2,000 to 3,000 cycles. I'd like 2,000 to 3,000 cycles. That's the lifetime of the car. So the battery will never be replaced.
So a cycle is a full.
A cycle is a
all the way
full thing.
down
So
and
if
all
you
the
go
way-
down 10%, charge up 10%, that's only 1/10 of a cycle.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So if you look at it for something that's got a, let's say it has a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack, and you get 4 miles per kilowatt hour, now you're talking about 200 miles. So if you got 2,000 cycles, that's 400,000 miles that you go. Okay. Easy access to the 12-volt battery. There's times when I want to reboot the computer. And I've done that before in order to fix things in the cars. The 110
You can't
outlet.
have it open both doors and.
110 outlet, I'd love to have a 110 outlet, you know. Qualify for rebates because I'm cheap, fits in the hangar because I'm lazy, and right. You got it exactly right. Would you read ahead? Driver config memory, I want to stay married. Okay, room for the kennel. We'd like to get all the people to be able to sit in the vehicle at the same time. So that's my rationale. Now, I did it really fast because the intention for this session was, what is it that you think is important to ask about when you look for an EV?
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
So that thing about the 12-volt battery, it seems like the Tesla, you gotta take apart the car to get.
Is that right? I don't know.
Well, in the 2013 Model S it is, but I still haven't, people say, hey, can you help me give a jump for those ICE cars? Sorry, I don't really know how to hook it up. I mean, I could, I should.
Yeah.
Should be able to do that because you're like the savior for the broken down car. So that I agree with that, 12-volt access. The other thing that's a little concerning is this announcement was like, we're just gonna make monster trucks because you need 10,000 ton towing. What about a standard of a hitch and with some nominal towing capabilities? This is European culture. You need a little trailer to go to the dump. You need a little camping thing. You put it behind your car. You need to tow your boat. Any of these sedans can do this if they get a little bit of enough muscle
and they have a standard hitch. So I would say that's, because I don't want to have to buy another truck, have it sit there, 99% of the time for that one dump run or whatever. Or borrowed trucks, shared trucks. I think the other thing about a level 2 plug to car thing, it's only happened a couple times, but like where the EV driver runs out of juice, got to call AAA and they tow him to a charger, or a friendly other EVer comes up and plugs them in. How often is that? I don't know how complicated it is. I don't know, but it is a thing.
Quicker chargers, that's the one thing as a 2020 Bolt driver, capped at 50 kW. Drive up, the others come in and are gone for you. And that they're charging it 200-300 kilowatts. That's nice. That's probably become more standard. And as the V2G thing, I think as a homeowner, you have a well, you don't need 50 kW, you need to cover the well. Or a couple things. So, well, when you put it in the wall, the fridge. Well, yeah, the fridge isn't that much, but it does have a surge on it. So, and
whatever, I don't know. Those are details, but
All right, you had 12 volt access, tow hitch.
I do think V2G is good.
Okay,
it's good. Tow hitch. Oh, the range, my wife just drove the Bolt to San Jose and back on that's 250 supposedly. So they didn't charge up when they were down there. Okay, my daughter. So 300, 250, 300, 300, yeah, maybe, but 250 works.
Other ideas?
Buttons. It's got to have buttons.
Buttons.
After
It has to have buttons.
2011, we had two 2014 Bolts, and my wife was, next car, I don't care what it is, it has buttons, because the Bolt had this, it was I remember the old Bolts for touchscreen, it was a big pile of words, and you didn't know what you were doing.
The Bolt?
Yeah, it was horrifying, yeah, so radio volume, temperature control, has to have knobs and buttons. You can't be buried in menus. And while you're driving, you don't want to be looking for menus. That's what.
Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing I would say is to your thing about the heating. When we're trying to sip and get there with the heat fogged up, like some defog, absolutely. You can handle the cold, but you got to be able to see.
Yeah.
So without pulling down the battery heavy. So, and yeah, car seat warming, is nice. Sure.
I can't tell on the screen whether Caleb is still there. Are you still there?
I am still here.
Oh, there you are. So you've got the Volkswagen. One of the things that I didn't put on my list that I probably should have put on my list was I want one pedal driving. In fact, when I take my feet off the pedals, I want the vehicle to stay still. Does the VW do that?
Not to the extent that you would prefer. However, in the B mode, similar to what you get on a Prius, it does. I've found it. I've adapted to it, I guess, but I found that it's almost sufficient. A software update would be nice to make it a little stronger, but I can roll to a light and then apply the brake to hold it.
Other ideas?
I have another.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the way the question is framed is kind of focuses on personal consumption, right? What do we love in the car? And EVs have only addressed one part of the problems with cars, which is, other part is worldwide 1.1 million people die in car crashes. We use a lot of space to park cars, to move cars.
Wait, I'm going to stop you for a second. I want to know, this is a shopping experience for a car.
No,
Are you telling us not to shop in the car? Is that part of it?
I'm saying that's another way to look at the question. So the question is, suppose you are breaking out that personal consumption framework and saying, what kind of car would we want to have that everybody can have, or that fits in the bigger car culture? And so one wish I have is that cars are made for sharing. So anyway, in Europe, your wife already pointed out to the need for a setting that can swap between people. And so we could have that for a shared car that we share with other families in the neighborhood. So we could ask the question, what other features would a car need to have to be more shareable?
Okay, would you want to give us some of the features then?
Hmm?
You want to give us some of the features?
Well, somehow, like
Memory
a,
for more than two, memory for more than two.
yeah, but also like a glove compartment that you can push out, take out and put in. So that you can kind of share the personalized features of your car with more people. I mean, that's an example, right? There's a big problem in EV because they tend to be heavier than other cars. And the weight of a car is correlated with the number of deaths it creates, right? So I would be really concerned about that. So the push for reach seems nice from a person point of view, but it really, as a society, to extend reach with present day battery capacities is deadly, right? It's not a good move. So you may personally feel that you like that car, you want to drive there and down and not worry. But are there other ways to solve that charging problem? There's this
Wait a
whole-
minute, Zeno,
So
I'm
a
waiting for you to
suggestion,
give us
what I
answers,
want to
not
have,
questions.
what I want to have is a battery that can be taken out and put back in.
You want a removable battery?
Removable battery, right?
Oh, like
So
the
you
Israelis.
can, what?
The Israelis had a company that battery
Right,
swapped.
right, so I want a removable battery and I want a network of stations where you can go in and out in 2 minutes and get your battery removed. Or maybe even if you share it with other people, you remove your own battery. There could be various other perspectives around it. So
We'll have to change the law in California because the reason that
I'm
you
not
couldn't use it in
asking for
California
objections.
was.
We're brainstorming.
Okay, Mike. Mike, you had your
So-
hand up. You had feature.
Go ahead,
What?
were you done?
Well, I think another problem with cars is,
Wait. We're not going through the problems with cars. We're
No,
looking for the features for an
Duly
EV.
noted.
Now, if you're redesigning the
I
industry, that's
introduced
a
my
whole different
feature,
session.
by looking at a problem.
Okay.
I want to solve a problem with my feature. So a problem is that a lot of people cannot access a car because they're too old, too young, they have handicaps. So only 50% of the population, I think, is physically able to drive around in a car, which is a huge equity concern.
I'm still
So I
gonna
am,
stop you. Are you gonna get to the
feature,
feature of the car?
my feature is automatic driving. So,
Automatic driving.
yeah, I want a car,
Level 5 autonomy.
that a car autonomy, that more people can access that type of personal transportation. Okay, that's my 3-4 features that I like to.
Can we go back to the removable battery? If the removable battery was standardized between manufacturers, I've always wondered why we just have enormous D cells. You just plug in like the size of a paint bucket, turn to the right 90, and everybody's got them.
Oh, you've got three.
Push them in, and
You've got 3 different companies that you can contact to find out why we don't have that, including Tesla.
Okay.
Because Tesla designed their vehicles so that they would do precisely that.
Yeah.
And in fact, they made stations
They
that
did,
would
that's
replace the batteries. Now, the problem was in California, you can't do that because the car would then be considered to be a lemon. And if you got a new battery, you had to pay for the sales tax for the battery you just put in. So those are things that would need to change.
Legislative things.
Legislative things. But the major problem turns out now that Tesla's new vehicles have gone in an entirely different direction. The battery is part of the structure of the vehicle in order to reduce the cost of the vehicle.
Yeah, that's right.
I would say you're trying to, if you acknowledge that 90% of your charging is at home.
Yep.
The whole battery swap thing is
Yeah.
an unnecessary complexity and a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah.
The more
I think when you,
interesting thing is to get these myriad of fast charger networks to actually work together, but that's not having to do with the car. It's the charging system And then for your solution about, I mean, I just talked to somebody who flew to LA, instead of renting a car, he drove lifts all over the place and they were all electric. Because they got an incentive to drive electric.
Okay.
So it's cheaper, don't have to have a car, so, but you get mobility. So those are mobility sharing issues, but the car thing, if somebody here wants to say.
David, your hand up.
Yeah, I'm assuming we're talking about what other average people kind of questions they would want to know about.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, please.
Okay, so I just said one of the things I think I agree with is this the efficiency aspect of the vehicle in miles per kilowatt hour, because all the people I talk to, when you start mentioning that, you can equate it to how much they're spending per kilowatt hour at home, and then can make a simple calculation to determine what it's costing them per mile or whatever. So the efficiency, I think, comparison, savings, where is this vehicle going to save you money over an ICE vehicle? Maintenance not needed. I'd love to see something on these stickers or telling people, hey, you don't have to change the oil, you don't have to do plugs, there's no mufflers to, I mean, there's 100 things that I don't think the average person, again, that you're talking to even understands. So that's in simple terms, you know, where can I save, or where would I save on maintenance? Ease of self-repair. I think people are put off by electric vehicles because they look at it and go, wow, this is high-tech stuff and it does all this, but I'll never be able to do anything. And I know how to change some spark plugs or the oil, or I can take it down to the corner garage. But if they understood some of the things they could do from a self-repair standpoint, it'd be interesting. The last thing is self-charging. And everybody's going to go, what the hell's that? I'm also on a list to buy an Aptera, and one of the things about an Aptera is it can self-charge with the solar, and there isn't any other vehicles out there that I know of. There were 2 other internationally, and both of those have stopped production as far as I know. So if you can get, again, when I'm talking to average people, I'm not talking about hitch weights and, you know, buttons and all this other stuff you're listing here. But when I'm talking to average people and I can say, hey, this car in California is going to get maybe 35, 40 mile range by sitting out in the sun when you're parked at work, their ears perk up a little bit and they go, well, that's interesting. Maybe I don't need to actually plug it in and know if I got 600 volt charging versus, you know, 150. In fact, the Aptera, I think they're only going to do 50 because the vehicle is so efficient. Again, getting back to 10 miles per kilowatt hour instead of a Ford 150 when it's towing, by the way, might get 1.4. There's a big difference there. That's all I have. I probably can have some more, but I think you got to consider talking to average people and what they want to know when they go in to buy a car and what they understand. There's a lot of things here that I'm not sure they're going to be asking questions. They're not the kind of questions I get asked when I drive my car around.
Well, and the one, I'm going to put one down here that I thought Zano was going to ask and suggest was pounds per capacity, because he's always talking to me about why you taking that big heavy thing around with you. So if I've got something with only 1 passenger or 2 passengers, how many pounds is it per passenger?
Well, you know, you can get a car, you can get a Ford 150 that goes 1,000 miles. It might weigh, you know, 10 tons, you know, to drive 1,000 miles. But if you tow, it's only going to get you 500 miles. So that's one of the things I don't think people understand on this towing question. And it's becoming more and more of an issue, because if you watch some of these videos of these people that test the Ford 150, and I'm all for the vehicle, but your range drops probably 50%.
Gary, I've got one.
You got one? Okay, wait. Ellen, did you send one out? I saw you texted something, but I can't read text at the same time.
Oh, that's okay. I just, in a future discussion, I'd love to discuss like what to look for in a used EV, like what to be cautious of rather than kind of the benefits, like what, you know, what things to be wary of. But yeah, and maybe Cecilia, I could take that on. I just don't know the answer, honestly.
Well, maybe somebody will throw that out. Steve?
I don't know if any of you all have experienced this, the issue with insurance and electric cars, that since we don't get our cars maintained near the rate of gasoline cars, like, in fact, I've never taken mine in.
Yeah.
There's an issue about reporting miles. So if you want to say, I only drive 5,000 miles a year, charge me a lower rate. Well, they actually, I've encountered this with multiple insurance companies. Well, we can't do that. You actually have to have something from a mechanic that says, I have that mileage for the year. And so I want something that transmits mileage information to whoever I choose to transmit it to.
So Steve, I can make a quick suggestion on that point, which is Metro Mile. I mean, they recently got bought by Lemonade, which is another insurance company, but they do a pay per mile insurance. I don't have a computer here, otherwise I could throw the link in the chat. But that's the first thing that I know.
Like Jerry, on this charging thing,
Yeah.
the charging infrastructure itself, we touched on it, we complain about it. But, you know, Tesla has plug in and go, and the rest of us have to whip out some app and hope for the best.
Well, I was about to put that one on. I was
So,
gonna ask somebody what that actually called, plug in and go.
I don't know what it's called either, but I think we all get it. You just plug it in.
Plug and charge.
It
What-
knows your
what's it
VIN
called,
number
Caleb?
'cause you know,
Plug and charge.
Plug and charge?
Let's go with that.
Ford has that with
Yeah,
Electrify America,
it's iffy, right?
seems to work.
It seems to work, okay, well, there you go, but something like that, I mean, it seems like the standards need to be standardized.
Yeah, so that's not necessarily a car, it's the chargers that could have, you know, they have protocols are behind there that would allow for plug and charge.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, but the car has.
Well, the car has to
to
be-
report
Hey,
something.
that's an
Feature of the car. Yeah, feature of the car.
So it's not in the J1772 standard.
It's not in that standard. So I think it's something we should be, as, you know, as an advocacy group, we should be pushing for that, right? I just want to plug it in and walk away.
I strongly agree with that.
Let's come to Ellen's question on used EV. So first of all, besides Ellen, who else has bought a used EV? Oh, Bruce has, right? You did too? You did?
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Everybody has a jersey.
So
I'd like to point out that we're over time, so we could probably save that for another discussion.
David, do you have another item or?
No, I used EV. One of the first things just to help people out. I mean, obviously, is the status of the battery. I mean, you can look at the car and everything, but if the battery's down to 5% of what it's supposed to be, then you got a problem. And you can check that in a lot of cases. There's ways of checking it. There's like some company out there that does that. I can't remember what the name it is, but that's like the key. I would think. I don't know. What's this?
Yeah, and Ellen, your dad was the one that told me something that Jerry mentioned briefly earlier, which is that the 2011 Nissan Leaf's Thunderstruck isn't even interested in the batteries until they're 2013 or newer because of some
Chemistry
feature.
changed.
Yeah, okay.
Chemistry changed. Yep.
But, you know, just this thing about, I don't know if it's a feature, but it's the common question I get is, well, one is, how much does it cost to charge at home? And that's like a little calculation between time of use rates and stuff versus on the road versus what you might pay with gas. So that's a little calculation that I've done and shared with people. The other is, we always look at the list price of a new car or used car. Well, what does it cost to lease? So Brant shared that in the discussion. That was really useful. It's like, it's all over the place. What does it cost per month? Makes it more accessible for a lot of people instead of I gotta write a check for however much. So price, those little, as far as buying, that's a.
Yeah, no, I mean, to echo off what's Sam? Steve, okay. Steve said earlier, have anyone else had that experience with insurance for their electric vehicles?
Well, I'm not doing by a mile, so.
But it's all based, the new car insurance is based on the price of the car, which is really high for electric cars and.
In terms
and
of
in
replacements
terms-
for accidents?
Yeah, so insurance for electric vehicles is typically higher than insurance for a gas car.
Well, and there was an article that, I don't know if it made it out to everybody, but there was an article talking about being a key driver is if you crack that battery pack in an accident, do you have to discard the entire battery? Right? If you have any dents on the battery pack, Do you have to discard the battery, yes or no?
Meaning every cell in the battery?
The whole thing. If you put a dent in the battery pack, in the collision, do the auto body shops know how to vet and verify that the battery pack is solid? It's not gonna catch on fire later, right? So the insurance companies are totaling cars, $50,000 cars that have a nick in the battery pack because they cannot verify that that thing is not gonna catch fire at 100 miles.
John's not on this call, it looks like, but actually Thunderstruck, and I proposed this to him a while ago when I found that out, because there's a specific auto auction site that deals in insurance resales, you know, vehicles that have been totaled by insurance companies. And then they basically resell them online through a specific auto auction site that's only available, well, not only, but mostly available to only licensed dealers. And there are really good deals. There are a few companies, there was that one in Portland, I think that you talked about with your Nissan Leaf, Mike, that buys vehicles that have been deemed totaled and then pulls the batteries out of them and resells the part basically. So there is a small market for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Jerry, just one, that example of the EV, the key, what was it, Kia EV9?
Yeah.
With the, oh, so you gotta pay extra to get your heat to work or whatever the hell.
Oh, yeah.
Frustrating as hell, what the hell? You know, so if you're gonna send this to manufacturers, like knock that off. That's
coming.
bullshit.
It's coming hard.
Guess what?
It's like, yeah, it's here.
But no, you get subscriptions for everything. these days.
I know, but we
Sirius
just accept
Radio,
it.
that They turn, you know, they give you that for.
Oh,
free
you
for 3
wanna
months
look
and
at
then turn it
that?
off.
It's coming.
Yeah. So my other one was, at least on this list, is ability to turn off the backup beeper.
Oh.
So,
Turn it down.
Mine has that.
I'm not sure, I think they made that so you can't do it
Well,
anymore.
so my Nissan has it, 12 years old, but my Kia Niro didn't, but there was an after, you know, there was a forum posting for how to wire it up.
Well, the same thing with Prius, but I thought, at this point that's now required in the vehicle, period.
It is, but when you back up out of your driveway at 5:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
you gotta turn it off.
Still,
It sounds like
Yeah.
So the solution, I remember a truck that Caleb and I worked on at one point. I went to one garage to go work on one of the vehicles, and the backup beeper didn't work. And what I found was they took the wire off of the beeper.
Yeah. But,
That's the solution.
yeah, but that's actually not the solution. These new cars that need sound for other things.
Yeah. Okay, anything else before we wrap up of this? And I'll tell you what, I'll put this in the directory with the presentation. I'll try to clean it up a little bit while typing.
Yeah, I think this would be an interesting handout at Earth Day, just to get people thinking about how to evaluate electric vehicles.
So, okay, so you guys are going to Earth Day. That's not a bad idea. Let's take this and the other things that I have there, and you guys can make one up before I'm gonna be out of town, so make one up. That's not a bad idea. I mean, here's the things that we were thinking about. And that gives you a good discussion piece where you're talking to people who are new to EVs and say, hey, these are the things we were thinking about. And you might find more things from them as well.
Jerry, can you share that somehow, that spreadsheet, so we can?
No, what I'm gonna do is I'll put it in the folder.
Okay.
That we have the PDFs in, and perhaps when you do the posting, Cecilia, in the text, can you put the link to this as well? The spreadsheet, I'll fix it up a little bit and I'll give you the link.
Perhaps we can make an article out of it to put on the website at some point.
Okay, right.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking was different driver profiles, you know, like Jerry or Sam or whatever thinks these things are important. Bob thinks these things are important. Sally thinks these things are important, to kind of give people.
That would be nice to work on. If we get a little task group together to work on that, that's a great idea. And then post that on the website. That would be fun. Okay, let me get back to the presentation. I'll stop that share.
So on the one pedal driving comment, while Jerry's doing that, so the EV6 has incredible one pedal driving. My wife, we had one pedal, we had like early one pedal driving on the 2014 Volt, but the new one has fully 4 levels. And so my wife, who never used Sport or any of those extra features on the Volt, she wouldn't touch it because she didn't understand all the crazy buttons. It has pedal shifters are paddle shifters on it. And she took to that in 30 minutes. We went for a drive on the coast. It was like driving a 20-speed car with no clutch. It was just amazing the way she coasted in, the way she pulled out.
The Volt has paddle shifters?
The new one did, but my 2014 did not.
Oh, okay.
My brand new EV6 does. And so my wife took to that like she used to drive her Camaro in the 80s. I mean, she absolutely loved it. When she was downshifting, she loved driving that car through the twists and the turns and setting up the curves like you do, you know, one pedal driving was phenomenal. And she got really good at it really fast. It was, anyway, I finally got her to adopt over.
Meaning that you would use because I didn't think EVs had transmissions, right?
No, it's all software.
Yeah.
It's all software.
She's doing all
Oh,
the
yeah.
hands.
Yeah.
I can't give them that.
Oh, yeah, the paddle shifters are amazing.
Is that a way of accelerating and decelerating? Is that what you're saying?
It just turns on the more or less regen.
Oh, okay, so it increases or decreases
It just
the
increases regen.
braking, I guess.
Yeah,
Okay. Huh.
Okay, Cecilia, you want to take us to the wrap?
All right, so just a couple of new links. Aptera discussed Comma AI with one YouTuber, and there's also an update on Truckla if you're familiar with Truckla, new video on that, and then just some evergreen links there. And next,
Okay.
and our next meeting will be May 13th. It might be here. We haven't gotten confirmation yet, but it will be on Zoom, and Don will be discussing the EV6.
All right.
All right.
Great.
Good month.
Thank you.